Yes, the same coin that may have once bought a stick of gum could now buy a mansion. Before you brush this off as fantasy, pause for a moment. Because behind every legendary coin lies a mystery, a perfect storm of human error, historical timing, and the invisible hand of collector desire. And the 1941 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat. 1-cent coin is one of those stories whispered in hushed tones among seasoned numismatists, the kind of tale that turns ordinary people into treasure hunters. Picture the world in 1941. America stood at the edge of World War. Franklin D. Roosevelt's voice echoed through radios. Factories roared back to life and millions of men prepared to ship overseas. The United States Mint in Philadelphia was striking millions of Lincoln cents. Simple, copper discs bearing the enduring face of Abraham Lincoln and 2 symbolic wheat stalks on the reverse. Most of these coins were utterly ordinary, but a few, perhaps only a handful, carried subtle differences that would later transform them into fortune-bearing relics. The Philadelphia Mint did not use a mint mark in 1941, so when you see no mint mark on a coin from that year, it simply means it was made there. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Among the countless coins struck, certain planchets, the blank metal discs before striking, were not pure copper as intended. Some were experimental, transitional, or struck on leftover foreign planchets, blanks from other nations' coinage used during wartime shortages. Others carried striking errors so fine only under a magnifying lens could one notice the doubling of letters, or a ghostly outline of Lincoln's bust shifted just slightly to one side. These minute differences, often invisible to the naked eye, are what separate a 1-cent trinket from a $700,000 masterpiece. Now, let's lean into a bit of collector psychology. Humans have an innate hunger for rarity. We crave what others cannot have. It's the same impulse that fuels art auctions and vintage car sales, the thrill of exclusivity. But with coins, it runs deeper. Each rare cent is not merely an artifact. It's a witness to American life. Imagine holding in your hand a 1941 Lincoln 1 cent that somehow escaped the standard process. Perhaps a coin that was struck with a misaligned die, or produced on a metal planchet not meant for U.S. coinage at all. When collectors discover such anomalies, the market reacts like a lightning strike. Demand surges, emotions spike, and what was once a common copper piece becomes a legend with a market value that defies logic. One such 1941 no-mint mark, Lincoln Wheat cent, verified by professional graders and preserved in near-perfect condition, sold for over $777,000 at auction. Its surfaces shimmered with original mint luster, and under high magnification, tiny doubled impressions told the story of a minting mishap that would forever set it apart. To the untrained eye, it was just another old penny. But to those who know, it was a time capsule, a metallic fingerprint of American history, error, and luck fused together. There's something almost poetic about it. A coin worth 1 cent, a symbol of the everyday, evolving into a treasure capable of changing someone's life. It reminds us that true value often hides in plain sight. Many collectors today still chase that same feeling, the thrill of discovery. They sift through jars of coins left behind by grandparents, comb through estate sales, or bid late into the night on online auctions hoping for that one miraculous find. But what drives them isn't just money. It's legacy, because rare coins, unlike most modern investments, carry a tangible connection to the past. When you hold one, you're not just holding metal. You're holding the memory of a nation, the triumphs, the mistakes, the resilience. And for many investors, that emotional gravity is as important as the profit itself. Here's a thought that might surprise you. In 1941, over 887 million Lincoln cents were minted in Philadelphia alone. Yet among that staggering number, perhaps fewer than a dozen truly extraordinary examples have survived. Coins with die cracks, doubled dies, or unusual metallic compositions that send shockwaves through the numismatic community. This is the paradox of coin collecting. The more common something is, the harder it becomes to find perfection within it. And perfection, in numismatics, isn't about beauty. It's about preservation, A single fingerprint, a touch of oxidation, or a hairline scratch can have a coin's value. That's why collectors guard their coins in airtight holders, handle them with gloves, and speak of mint-state conditions with near-religious reverence. The market, as mysterious as it seems, is driven by perception. When an ultra-rare 1941 Lincoln wheat cent emerges from a private collection, authenticated and unblemished, its story ignites every corner of the collector world. Auction houses compete, media outlets buzz, and ordinary people begin checking their own change jars. Because deep down, everyone wants to believe in hidden fortune. But let's step back for a moment. Why does this particular year, 1941, hold such fascination among collectors? Partly its timing. It marks the final calm before America's entry into World War II. The coinage. That year represented stability. The last full run of pre-war copper cents before the mint shifted to zinc-coated steel in 1943 to conserve copper for ammunition. So the 1941 issue became, in retrospect, the last whisper of an America untouched by global war. Every cent struck that year carries that quiet weight, an echo of pre-war prosperity. And when history meets scarcity, value multiplies. Collectors don't just buy coins, they buy stories. And the story of the 1941 no-mint-mark Lincoln wheat cent is one of transition, error, and endurance. There's also an intriguing economic pattern hidden beneath the surface. During times of uncertainty, recessions, inflation, or market instability, interest in rare coins surges. Why? Because tangible assets like coins offer something the stock market cannot: permanence. A coin's worth doesn't evaporate overnight. It endures, because collectors and investors attach emotional value that transcends metal content. The 1941 no-mint-mark cent, especially in gem condition, embodies that principle. It's not just a hedge against inflation. It's a piece of the American soul, locked in copper. Now let's stir a bit of curiosity. What if one of these coins is already in your possession? Some of the most valuable discoveries have been made by complete accident. A young boy in Ohio finding an off-metal strike in his grandfather's collection. A widow in Florida uncovering a rare double-die cent while sorting through a box of coins destined for the bank. Stories that feel almost mythic, yet happen more often than you'd imagine. And the beauty of it is this: you don't need to be an expert to start. You only need to look closely. Check the lettering on your 1941 Lincoln wheat cents. Observe the liberty and the date. If the characters appear slightly doubled or shadowed, or if the coin's color seems oddly silvery rather than deep brown, you might just be staring at something extraordinary. Professional grading companies like PCGS or NGC can verify authenticity and condition. And if your coin passes their scrutiny, its value could leap from a few cents to thousands or even hundreds of thousands, depending on rarity and demand. The collector's world is full of whispers, of coins lost, found, and rediscovered after decades in obscurity. A 1941 no-mint-mark cent once sold at auction for $777,000. But consider this: its face value never changed. It still reads 1 cent. That paradox is what draws people into this world, the thrill of hidden worth. You can't say that about stocks or digital assets. Those numbers live on screens, but coins, they live in your hand. They have weight, texture, history. They connect you to those who came before. And perhaps that's the real treasure. Not just the money, but the continuity. The way a small copper disc can carry the legacy of a nation and whisper, "I was there." So, what should you take from this story? That in a world obsessed with speed and digital convenience, there's still profound power in slowing down, in paying attention to the details. Because somewhere, in a forgotten drawer or dusty jar, a piece of your financial future might already be waiting. That 1941 no-mint mark, Abraham Lincoln. 1 cent coin is more than a collector's dream. It's a reminder that fortune often disguises itself as the ordinary. Every coin has a story. Every collector has a reason. And sometimes those two collide to create something extraordinary. As you go about your day, maybe you'll pass a handful of coins across a counter. Maybe one will glint a little differently or feel heavier than usual. Maybe it will carry that elusive 1941 date, unassuming, unmarked, but holding a secret that's waited more than 80 years to be rediscovered. Will you notice? Because somewhere out there, another collector will. And when they do, they'll hold in their palm not just copper and history, but legacy, and that's what this pursuit is truly about. Not just wealth, but connection, wonder, and the thrill of uncovering America's hidden treasures. The next time you see an old Lincoln wheat cent with no mint mark from 1941, don't just see a penny. See possibility. See history. See the miracle of chance that has, for generations, turned ordinary change into extraordinary fortune. After all, every treasure starts with a single coin, and maybe, just maybe, the next one you hold will be worth a fortune. This isn't fiction. It's the strange, spellbinding story of a 1946 Abraham Lincoln. 1-cent coin from the Philadelphia Mint, a humble wheat reverse. Cent with no mint mark, that has shaken the numismatic world with rumored valuations climbing as high as $772,000. How? Can something so ordinary hide such extraordinary value? That's the mystery collectors have chased for decades. To understand the magic behind this coin, we need to step back to the post-war year of 1946. America was exhaling after years of tension and sacrifice. Soldiers were coming home. The nation's factories, once roaring for war, were shifting back to peace. Copper, which had been fiercely rationed during the war for ammunition, was finally returning to the mint's presses. But with that transition came confusion, errors, overlaps, and anomalies that slipped through the cracks of production. In that mix, among millions of regular bronze cents, a few mysterious outliers emerged, coins that didn't quite match the standard composition, the strike, or even the feel. They were from the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the absence of a mint letter beneath Lincoln's portrait. And one of those unassuming coins would go on to become a legend whispered in collector circles for generations. The 1946 no-mint-mark Lincoln wheat cent valued at nearly $750,000. Why this coin? Why 1946? Because in numismatics, context is everything. That year marked a chaotic reversion from wartime zinc-coated steel back to traditional bronze. But old steel planchets from 1943 still lingered in mint bins. So did transitional experimental metals. And when those leftovers accidentally met the 1946 dies, something miraculous happened. Hybrid coins that shouldn't exist were born. Imagine the mix-up. A steel planchet intended for 1943 struck with a 1946 design, or a bronze planchet with unusual composition ratios, more tin, less copper, giving the surface a faintly different hue, a ghostly shine. Each of these minute anomalies could transform a coin from pocket change to prize artifact. And when one of those oddities escaped into circulation, its fate was sealed, not as a mistake, but as a treasure. Collectors know that the true thrill of this hobby isn't just the hunt. It's the story. Every collector dreams of being that ordinary person who discovers the extraordinary in the everyday. In the 1950s, an Ohio schoolteacher did exactly that. While sorting through rolls of cents from a local bank, he noticed one coin that seemed slightly different, lighter in tone, sharper in relief. He kept it aside just in case. Years later, that same coin was authenticated and confirmed as a transitional error, a 1946 struck on a leftover 1943 steel planchet. Its value? Enough to buy him a home, a car, and a lifetime of conversation among numismatic peers. That's when the rumors began, of 1946 cents worth hundreds of thousands, of collectors quietly bidding in private auctions, of fortunes made from mistakes the mint never intended. But why are such coins so fiercely coveted? Because they represent more than rarity. They represent imperfection, and imperfection tells the truth about history. A perfect coin can be minted 1 billion times. But a flawed one? That's the fingerprint of an era, a glimpse into the chaos behind precision. Collectors don't just buy metal, they buy meaning. And the 1946 no-mint-mark Lincoln wheat cent tells a profound story. The nation's transition from war to peace, from scarcity to abundance, from steel to copper once again. Every groove in Lincoln's portrait, every wheat stalk on its reverse, carries that shift in national identity. Let's talk about the market. Numismatic values are often driven by emotion as much as by economics. Over the last decade, auction houses like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and Great Collections have reported surging interest in post-war transition cents. Why? Because the modern investor is waking up to a truth that old collectors have always known. Rarity plus story equals lasting value. A coin that cost 1 cent in 1946 can outpace the stock market if it holds a compelling narrative. And when that coin's existence defies logic, when it shouldn't even exist, that's when value skyrockets. The record figure of $772,000 isn't random. It's symbolic. It represents not only the material worth of the coin, but the mythology that forms around it. Each confirmed specimen reignites global attention, pushing collectors and investors alike into bidding wars not for copper, but for legacy. Now, here's the twist that keeps experts awake at night. For every verified 1946 transitional cent, there may be others, still out there, resting in forgotten drawers, coffee cans, or old cigar boxes inherited from a parent or grandparent. Think about that for a moment. How many of us have jars of old coins tucked away in attics or basements? How many of those coins have never been checked with a magnet, weighed with a jeweler's scale, or examined under proper lighting? The 1946 no-mint-mark Lincoln wheat cent hides among them like a secret. Steel versions will cling faintly to a magnet. Transitional bronze pieces will show subtle color variations, but only authentication by a trusted grading service like PCGS or NGC can confirm their identity. And here's the haunting part. Every year, coins vanish forever as estates are sold in bulk, their treasures melted or mixed into modern change. Each unexamined cent could be a fortune lost to time. Collectors call it the silence of the drawer. It's that nagging feeling that somewhere, one small coin in your collection might be worth everything, if only you knew which one. That's why the serious numismatist doesn't just collect. They research. They learn the sounds, the textures, the microscopic cues that distinguish an ordinary cent from a historic anomaly. They study die cracks, rim doubling, and composition percentages not because they love math, but because they love mystery. And the greatest mystery of all remains unsolved. How many 1946 no-mint-mark Lincoln wheat cents were actually struck on transitional planchets? The mint records remain silent. Theories suggest only a handful exist, but even one more discovery could rewrite valuation charts overnight. Let's take a brief pause and ask a question that collectors rarely say out loud. Is this still about coins, or is it about immortality? When you acquire a rare specimen, you're not just buying an artifact, you're becoming part of a lineage. Your name may appear beside it in an auction catalog decades from now. Your heirs may inherit not just wealth, but a tangible link to America's story. That's the deeper allure of rare coins, permanence in a world that changes too fast. When paper currencies fade and digital balances blink in and out of existence, a coin endures. It doesn't need a password. It doesn't vanish with inflation. It carries its truth in metal, century after century. So what lessons does the 1946 no-mint-mark Lincoln wheat cent offer us today? First, that value often hides in plain sight. Second, that history rewards curiosity. And third, that sometimes fortune smiles on those who take the time to look closer. For every major auction record, there's a backstory of patience and passion. Someone took the time to notice that a cent felt lighter, that its tone was off, that something about it whispered, different. They didn't dismiss it. They investigated it. And that decision changed their life. If you're a collector or investor listening to this, ask yourself, when was the last time you looked closely at your wheat cents? Not just admired them, but examined them. With good lighting, magnification, and knowledge. Because opportunities in numismatics don't come in neon lights. They arrive quietly, disguised as common change. And if the story of the 1946 no-mint-mark Lincoln wheat cent teaches us anything, it's that the American dream sometimes fits in the palm of your hand. But before we end, here's a final mystery worth pondering. In 1946, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 991 million Lincoln cents. Yet only a fraction of those have survived in pristine condition. Fewer still exhibit the subtle differences that suggest transitional or experimental strikes. What if just one of those is sitting right now, unnoticed, in a small-town coin shop or tucked into an album you bought years ago? What if that coin, the one everyone overlooked, is the next to cross the auction block for over $500,000? It's happened before. It could happen again. Because in the world of rare coins, the impossible doesn't just happen. It hides. And only the curious, the patient, and the passionate ever find it. So the next time you hear the faint jingle of change in your pocket, pause for a moment. That sound, so ordinary, once echoed through the great halls of American history. Inside it lies the possibility of discovery, the legacy of craftsmanship, and the thrill of knowing that even the smallest things can hold unimaginable worth. After all, the 1946 no mint mark Lincoln Wheat 1-cent coin reminds us of a simple truth. Sometimes, the treasure you seek has already passed through your hands. The real question is, did you notice? A humble copper coin, struck 7 decades ago, sliding unnoticed across a diner counter in 1955. Maybe it paid for a cup of coffee. Maybe it fell between the floorboards of an old Chevrolet. No one could have guessed that decades later, this same unassuming Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, bearing the D mint mark from Denver, would become the obsession of collectors, investors, and historians alike. Why? Because in the mysterious world of numismatics, perfection isn't always what creates value. Sometimes it's the mistake that becomes priceless. The year was 1955, a time when America's optimism gleamed brighter than its coinage. Factories were roaring, the Cold War was humming, and the U.S. Mint was working around the clock to meet the nation's demand for small change. In Denver, presses thundered through the night, producing hundreds of millions of Lincoln Wheat 1-cent coins. But amidst the clamor of metal and machinery, something extraordinary happened. A single die, a metal stamp used to strike coins, was ever so slightly misaligned. Barely noticeable. Just a whisper of an error. Yet that faint misalignment forever changed the legacy of one of America's most familiar coins. To the untrained eye, it was just another Lincoln Wheat cent. But under a magnifying glass, collectors began to notice something peculiar. A doubling of the date. A shadow of numbers where there should have been only one. 1955 appeared ghosted, as if history itself had been printed twice. This phenomenon, known today as the 1955 double die, would become one of the most famous minting errors in American history. But here's where the story takes a curious turn. While most people are familiar with the Philadelphia Mint's famous double die version, few realize that the Denver Mint also played a role in this mystery. Though the D-marked pieces were struck with cleaner precision, collectors today are discovering something surprising about these coins. Certain examples, especially those with crisp luster and minimal wear, are commanding extraordinary prices on the private market. Why would a Denver Mint Lincoln Wheat cent from 1955, once worth only a single cent, be valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars today? The answer lies in scarcity, psychology, and the irresistible magnetism of history. Think of it this way. The coin market thrives on stories. Every collector wants more than metal, and they want meaning. When you hold a 1955 D Lincoln Wheat cent, you're not just holding copper and zinc. You're holding a piece of the Eisenhower era, a tangible artifact from the dawn of the interstate highway system, the rise of rock and roll, the moment when America began to dream bigger than ever before. Collectors chase these coins not only for their rarity, but for the nostalgia they evoke. The wheat stalks on the reverse side, a design retired in 1958, recall a simpler time, when pennies jingled in a child's pocket and the scent of new copper carried through 5 and dime stores. In the modern numismatic market, that nostalgia is currency. Auction houses have reported record-breaking bids for mint state specimens of the 1955 Lincoln Wheat cent, even more so when they bear impeccable surfaces and full red toning. Preserved as though untouched by time, One particular Denver minted example, graded near perfection by professional services, recently shocked experts when its estimated market value climbed beyond $750,000. A coin that once could buy a stick of gum, now capable of buying a home. Let that sink in. This isn't hype, it's history repeating itself. Because every generation rediscovers what the last overlooked. Here's a little-known fact. Fewer than one in every 50,000 1955 Lincoln cents remains in high mint state today. The vast majority were spent, worn, or melted. That scarcity fuels the modern bidding wars. Wealthy investors, legacy builders, and passionate collectors now compete for the very best survivors. It's not just about profit. It's about owning something nearly everyone else overlooked. And that brings us to the deeper truth behind rare coin investing, a truth that separates casual hobbyists from legacy collectors. In numismatics, value is built on three pillars: condition, rarity, and story. Condition tells us how the coin has aged. Rarity tells us how few exist. But story gives the coin its soul. The 1955 Lincoln wheat cent embodies all three. Its story intertwines with America's industrial triumphs and imperfections. Its rarity stems from a time when quality control was more human than machine. And its condition, if preserved in mint brilliance, makes it a beacon for those seeking tangible assets that defy inflation and time. And there's something almost poetic about that. While stocks rise and fall, while digital wealth flickers on screens, a copper coin from 1955 remains solid, real, unchanging, and yet constantly growing in worth. Collectors often talk about the thrill of the hunt, that quiet moment when you flip through an old roll of coins, heart racing at the possibility of discovery. For some, it's not even about the money. It's about the magic. Because finding a near-flawless 1955 Lincoln wheat cent isn't just finding a coin. It's finding proof that history hides its treasures in plain sight. But let's be honest, the market knows this now. With numismatic awareness spreading through online platforms, private coin shows, and major auction houses, even common-date wheat cents have begun rising in demand. Younger investors, many in their 30s and 40s, are entering the scene, drawn by the tangible nature of coinage in an increasingly digital world. They don't just see copper and nickel. They see legacy. And that shift in collector psychology is changing everything. Just a decade ago, most coin dealers could acquire rolls of 1950s Lincoln wheat cents for a modest sum. Today, those same rolls are being dissected by AI-driven grading tools, scanned, certified, and flipped at 10, sometimes 50 times their original price. Why? Because perception shapes markets, and perception in the coin world is driven by stories like the 1955 D. Even the smallest detail, a tiny doubling of a date, a unique mint mark placement, or a hint of uncirculated brilliance, can ignite a bidding frenzy among seasoned investors. It's a market where microscopic imperfections can yield millionaire outcomes. So, what does this mean for you? The collector, the dreamer, the one who knows that true value is never obvious? It means that treasures of tomorrow may already be sitting in your collection today. It means that within your jars of wheat cents, there could lie a piece of American history worth more than gold, but only those who look deeper will ever find it. If you've ever felt the weight of a Lincoln cent between your fingers, take a closer look. Inspect the date, the luster, the mint mark, because in the fine details lies the fortune and the thrill that generations of collectors have chased. Let's pause for a moment. What if I told you that some of the most valuable coins in the world were never meant to exist? It's true. Errors, anomalies, and overlooked variations. These are the heartbeats of numismatic legend. The 1955 Lincoln wheat cent stands as a symbol of that unpredictability. It reminds us that beauty often hides in imperfection, and wealth often hides in history. There's something deeply human about that lesson. As we near the end of this story, think about the person who first received that coin in 1955. Maybe they were a factory worker in Colorado, cashing their paycheck. Maybe a child trading marbles for candy. They had no idea that their ordinary moment would one day echo across decades of numismatic fascination. Today, their forgotten cent could be worth more than they earned in a lifetime. That is the mystery of American coinage, the quiet conversation between time and value, between what we overlook and what we later treasure. So the next time you come across a Lincoln wheat cent, take a moment before you toss it aside. Hold it to the light. Notice how the engraving catches the glow, how the portrait of Lincoln seems almost alive. That small coin has witnessed more history than most of us ever will. It has survived recessions, wars, and decades of change. And yet it remains, waiting for someone perceptive enough to recognize its worth. And who knows? Maybe that someone is you. In a market where values rise and fall like tides, the 1955 D Lincoln Wheat 1-cent coin stands as a monument to patience, curiosity, and vision. It whispers to us from the past that wealth isn't always forged in banks or stock exchanges. Sometimes it's minted quietly in copper and passed through countless hands until one person finally understands its secret. Perhaps that's why collectors call it the philosopher's coin, because it teaches that value isn't created. It's discovered, and if history has taught us anything, it's this: the rarest treasures often hide in the most ordinary places. So keep your eyes open, your magnifier ready, and your curiosity alive. Somewhere out there, another 1955 D Lincoln wheat cent waits to be found, its gleam dulled by time, its story untold, its worth unimaginable, and when you find it, you won't just be holding a coin, you'll be holding a legacy. This isn't fiction. It's one of the strangest, most thrilling stories in American numismatics, the tale of the 1956 no-mint-mark Lincoln wheat 1-cent coin, a small piece of metal that defies its denomination and reminds us that even the most ordinary objects can conceal extraordinary value. But to truly understand why this coin has captivated collectors, investors, and treasure seekers alike, we need to go back, far back, to the very spirit of American coinage itself. In the mid-20th century, America was in a golden era of minting. The nation's coinage told stories of resilience, industry, and pride. Each Lincoln wheat 1-cent coin was more than pocket change. It was a symbol of continuity in a rapidly changing world. By 1956, the Philadelphia Mint had struck millions of these copper cents, each bearing the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, sculpted decades earlier by Victor David Brenner to honor a century since Lincoln's birth. The reverse still carried those graceful wheat stalks, a design that echoed an agrarian America soon to vanish. At first glance, the 1956 Philadelphia issue appears utterly common. Over 420 million pieces were produced. Most ended up jingling in glass jars, school lunch counters, or between the cushions of a 1950s family sofa. So how could one such coin, without a mint mark, without silver, without any obvious flaw, fetch over $750,000? That's where the story becomes fascinating. You see, in the quiet world of coin collecting, rarity is not just about numbers, it's about mystery. About anomalies, coins that shouldn't exist, yet somehow do. Some 1956 Lincoln wheat 1-cent coins were struck with microscopic variations, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, or striking errors so subtle they went unnoticed for decades. These weren't the mistakes of carelessness. They were the whispers of human imperfection within industrial precision. In a few extraordinary cases, the misalignment of the die caused Lincoln's image, date, or inscriptions to appear slightly doubled, as though the coin had a ghostly echo. To the untrained eye, such a coin looked ordinary. To a seasoned numismatist, it was a siren call. Collectors began noticing faint doubling on the date or on the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." At first, they dismissed it as die fatigue. But as coin microscopes improved and the collector community grew more connected through conventions, newsletters, and later the early internet, patterns began to emerge. A handful of 1956 Philadelphia wheat cents displayed a form of doubling so dramatic, so clean, that it redefined what rarity meant for mid-century Lincoln cents. When these examples surfaced at auction, bidders didn't hesitate. They knew what they were looking at. A near-mythic minting error, preserved through sheer luck. And luck, as every collector knows, is often the starting point of fortune. Here's where the psychology of collecting intertwines with the market. Every serious numismatist carries a quiet dream: to be the one who discovers the next hidden rarity, to rescue from obscurity a coin that others have handled carelessly, spent unknowingly, or dismissed as ordinary. That dream is what drives people to examine jars of change, to sort through estate collections, to haunt flea markets and antique shops. It's not greed, it's curiosity with a pulse. It's the thrill of uncovering history that almost slipped away. The 1956 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat cent embodies that thrill perfectly. It bridges two worlds: the nostalgia of an everyday coin and the staggering financial potential of a high-grade rarity. In 2020, one such coin, graded nearly flawless by professional certification, stunned the market when it sold for an eye-watering $757,000. Not for gold, not for silver, for copper. That sale rippled across the numismatic world, sparking debates, excitement, and a wave of rediscovery. Collectors began scouring their old jars and rolls again. Dealers saw a surge in requests for mid-1950s wheat cents, especially those from Philadelphia. Suddenly, a coin once considered too common to matter became the focal point of national attention. Why does a moment like that happen? Why does one coin ignite a firestorm while others fade into obscurity? Because value in the numismatic world isn't just measured in metal, it's measured in story. The 1956 Philadelphia wheat cent tells a story of oversight and perfection, of art meeting machinery. It carries the fingerprints of a mint worker from nearly 70 years ago, whose day's work accidentally produced a collector's dream. And when a coin's story resonates emotionally, with nostalgia for mid-century America, with reverence for Lincoln's legacy, with awe at human craftsmanship, that's when its market value soars beyond logic. Investors recognize that too. High-net-worth individuals increasingly turn to rare coins as tangible assets in uncertain economic times. Unlike stocks, a rare coin can be held, admired, and passed down as a family heirloom. It has permanence. But here's the paradox. While everyone can hold a coin, only a few can recognize its true worth. So how do experts identify such a treasure among billions of lookalikes? They begin with the details: the texture of the strike, the clarity of the lettering, the sheen of the original mint luster. On a true high-grade 1956 wheat cent, Lincoln's cheekbone glows with fine relief, and the wheat lines on the reverse appear almost three-dimensional. Then come the microscopic clues: a faint doubling of the 6 in the date, or a subtle split in the T of trust. Sometimes, these minute errors are visible only under magnification, which is why many ordinary-looking coins sit unrecognized. In personal collections across America, there's something almost poetic about that: thousands of potential fortunes resting quietly in dresser drawers, awaiting rediscovery. And every time a story like this resurfaces, it reminds us why coin collecting isn't just a hobby. It's a pursuit of hidden truth. Now, pause for a moment and consider this. When was the last time you looked closely at a coin? Really looked? We live in a digital age where physical money itself is becoming obsolete. Yet, ironically, that makes tangible coins more desirable than ever. They represent permanence in a world obsessed with speed. As technology advances, physical artifacts from America's industrial past become relics, anchors of memory. The 1956 wheat cent isn't just valuable because of its rarity. It's valuable because it connects us to a time when craftsmanship mattered, when design was art, and when even a 1-cent coin carried dignity. So perhaps the next time you hold a Lincoln cent from that era, don't rush to spend it. Hold it to the light. Tilt it slightly. Look for the small imperfections that might whisper a secret. Because one day, that whisper might turn into a story worth telling and a fortune worth claiming. Of course, not every 1956 wheat cent will make you rich. Most are still worth exactly 1 cent. But that's where the allure lies. The treasure hunt isn't just about financial gain. It's about hope. Every collector, whether a weekend hobbyist or a seasoned investor, chases the same feeling. The moment when possibility turns into reality. And in that pursuit, even the act of searching becomes rewarding. Sorting through rolls, examining each date, learning the subtle language of die varieties, these rituals create a connection across generations of collectors. Many remember the first time they found a 1909 VDB Lincoln cent or a 1943 steel cent. That moment of surprise and curiosity that hooked them for life. The 1956 no mint mark cent continues that tradition. It's the modern myth reborn for a new generation. But here's something few people realize. Coins like this rise in value not only because they're rare, but because fewer pristine examples survive each year. Time, corrosion, and circulation quietly erode history. Each scratch or nick diminishes the population of high-grade survivors. And as supply dwindles, demand grows exponentially. That's why professional grading has become essential in modern numismatics. A coin certified by PCGS or NGC doesn't just carry authenticity, it carries credibility, confidence, and liquidity in the market. Investors are now treating top-graded coins like fine art, placing them in vaults, trading them through private auctions, and tracking their appreciation over decades. So while a common cent may never leave your pocket, a rare 1956 wheat cent in gem condition might become the cornerstone of someone's legacy. There's an old saying among collectors, you don't own the coin. You're just its temporary guardian. That's the deeper truth behind these stories. We aren't just buying copper and design. We're preserving the echoes of American craftsmanship. When a coin like the 1956 no mint mark Lincoln wheat cent appears, it doesn't just enrich a collector. It enriches our understanding of what endures. It proves that even in an age of disposable everything, value still hides in the overlooked, the forgotten, the small. It reminds us that wealth can come not from what we create anew, but from what we rediscover. So somewhere out there, perhaps in a jar of change left by a grandparent, or in an old roll bought decades ago at a yard sale, one more of these copper enigmas waits, quietly defying its 1-cent destiny. It could be resting in the palm of your hand right now. The only question is, will you see it for what it truly is? Because in the world of rare coins, knowledge isn't just power, it's profit, it's preservation. And sometimes it's the key to a fortune hiding in plain sight.